Austraeoh by Imploding Colon, read by Deathlight. Chapter 12, Dizzy. By the next afternoon, Rainbow Dash had traveled a great distance. Unlike the other 2 days previously, she hadn't let any passing landscape or random sight interrupt her. She coasted with great speed, breaking the sun and piercing her way eastward like she was a second sun on an unwavering path. When the horizon grew dim enough, she slid the shades out of her goggles and squinted at the world below. With clear vision, she saw the mountains smoothing from jagged frames to rolling curves. Instead of barren rock, the mountainous terrain was covered with a dense ocean of green fir trees. The air was thick with oxygen and life. Several flocks of birds crisscrossed with the rainbow's path as she sped towards the dark spot on the horizon. From a distance, Rainbow tried to discern just what the grand blemish was. She had flown over so many mountain ranges that she had practically memorized the shape of such geological features. She wondered if perhaps she was spotting a rainstorm on the horizon. But as she sped further and further towards it, the dark spot failed to move. Her lips pursed and her forehead scrunched in thought. She wondered if it could have been smoke from a forest fire, or a random mesa jutting up from the ground, or even a building of sorts. How long has it been since she's seen civilization? She studied the map on several breaks during her trek, and though she found the entire process boring, she became well acquainted with many countries lying on the far right edge of her illustrated guide. In the middle of her pondering, she was interrupted by the horrible sensation of her eyes forcibly rolling back in her head. Rainbow Dash's entire world jolted as her wings briefly went numb, throwing her body limply through the air. She coughed, spat, and struggled to jerk her wings into action. Her vision has all but left her, and a nauseous dizziness was taking over. It was happening again. She tried not to panic. She held her breath and relaxed her muscles, and stretched her twitching wings straight out. With remarkable grace, she was guiding her spasming body slowly downward, so she approached the earth in a steady descent instead of a rock-hard plummet. All the while, the dizziness only intensified. The windy air filled with a low bass hum. By the time she regained control of her eyes, she saw the dim glow of her pendant fluctuating on its own, and she saw a sea of green treetops screaming at her. Rainbow held her breath, covering her eyes with her forehooves. Her body barreled into branch after branch of sharp leaves and needles. Grunting, she bore the multiple stabs to her torso and skimmed her way downward until her nostrils smelled the dank earth. At the last second, she spun around and absorbed the impact with her side. A loud gasp escaped her lips. She toppled, rolled, and finally came to a tumbling stop against a mound of wet dirt. There, she curled up into a blue ball and cradled her glowing pendant about her neck. A practiced hiss came out of her lips as she weathered the waves of dizziness coming out of her. She had been through this before. She had been in worse spots when it hit. She simply had to keep calm, keep breathing, and wait it out. The world spun around her. There was no up or down, only her mind in the center of a great spinning chaos. She tore her goggles off and plopped them to the ground, and covered her clenched eyes with a pair of hooves. She was afraid to open her eyes. She knew the entire world would be nothing but gray. Finally, after several hyperventilating minutes, the dizziness faded away. Rainbow didn't need to see to know that the pendant had stopped glowing. All she cared was that she found the earth again, and it was warm and blessing to the touch. She cuddled the muddy ground like a foal would nuzzle up to her mother's side. And finally, her breathing had returned to normal. Oh, all in all, it wasn't so bad. She sat up and opened her blurry eyes. She reeled. She was still dizzy. But the nausea was gone, and she realized she could move if she wanted to. First though, she had picked up her goggles. She grabbed them and lifted them up to her face. She briefly saw her reflection and immediately wished she hadn't. Her eyes were different, red specks against yellow marbles. She blinked, and just like that, her ruby pupils and white cornea returned. Rainbow's nostrils flared. Everything was back to normal, or at least as normal as she could afford them to be. She stood the goggles up, but let them stay on her brow. After all, she knew it would be a good few hours before she felt healthy enough to fly again. She had done this dance far too many times to expect otherwise. Sighing, she broke into a wobbly trot, shaking off the last threads of dizziness as she scaled up the mountainside on hoof. Her only regret was that the day's perfect flight had been interrupted.
It was still the next day,
Rainbow reasoned. It was a perpetual enough thought to make her smile, and her pace quickened.